Hey everyone, I'm Steven. I'm the former senior editor at XDA Developers, and I spent most of the 2010s doing what today would be called a forward deployed engineer in Python in regulated environments. A year, a year ago, okay, come on, there we go. A year ago today, a year ago today actually, my proudest moment in open source was a 10-line PR in OPN Sense, and it's still up there. But today we're talking about a million-line Perl parser. So obviously a million lines is a lot of code. There's no way I could read all that. So the question is, how do we develop so we can trust a code base that we can't read every line of? Because it's a million lines, I'm one person, I can't read that much by myself. So that ended up setting the design and direction for a lot of things we did, why we laid out our code base the way it is, why we chose Rust, why we did a bunch of things like that. But at the end of the day, only Perl can parse Perl. Because in order to parse Perl, you essentially need to compile Perl, because Perl can rewrite itself at runtime. So if you're trying to statically parse Perl, you're going to have incomplete parsing, no matter how hard you try, which is how we ended up at a million lines and climbing, trying to parse it. Because there's more than one way to do it. For the exact same character, the context around what's currently happening changes how the lexer needs to interpret it. Because in a in most languages, the lexer can just kind of lex the tokens. It doesn't need to know parser state in order to properly lex. But unfortunately, Perl, the current parser state determines what tokens can be lexed as. As a result, we have to build out a recursive descent parser that very quickly blows up in a line of code. And a big part of it is preparing for the fact that we know the LLMs are going to hallucinate. 12% of what they put out will be confidently wrong. And they're not even going to bother to do even searches to double check. For example, in April, I was trying to add better LSPs, better integration documentation for a lot of VS Code and other things like that. And one of the things I asked it to add better documentation for was OpenClaw, because OpenClaw has some ability to interact with LSPs and use that to get an understanding of what the code base is. And instead of looking at what OpenClaw was, it hallucinated that it was similar to Moose and just tried to implement it as a Perl term. And that would have been a huge mess, because that's definitely not the real Perl term. But the question is, what did it take to build that out? And first off, a ton of tokens. Back in April, we were using $25,000 per month in API costs. Although thankfully we were not paying that, it was just a $200 plan. And as a result, Anthropic put in rate limits because we were running pretty much like all day long, 5 sessions a day of 5-hour sessions of just trying different approaches and testing out how we can try and get better parsing of Perl there. And the question really is, how do you harness that many tokens? Because I can't read that much output. There's no way I could read that much output. And the answer really is the traditional SDLC. We just implemented waterfall in the agents itself. We had them go and find we had one agent go and figure out what the proper implementation for something was, one agent playing it out, one agent doing building, or really more than one agent. We would have loops between authors and critics for each stage. So what would happen was we would have one agent build, then a second agent would go and critique that build, and pump it. They would both answer with what their findings were to an orchestrator agent that would deliberate between the two of them and figure out which one's wrong and try and keep pushing through until it got to a point where it was passing tests and as close as it thought it could get. And by the end of it, you're going through 150 different agents, looping back and over them, just having them attack the specs, having them oppositionally oppose what the design is, and really get to the point where it's closer to something that would be acceptable than the first agent pass would have done. And it would run for 9 hours. So I'd have one part that I'd want to implement. I'd plan out with ChatGPT in the morning. I'd lay out a implementation plan for it, and then have the agents run through it for the next 9 hours and check on it at the end of the day, and then set up another one for running overnight. But unfortunately, that fell apart. Not from the rate limits. We were actually fine with the rate limits. It was from Sonnet getting range anxiety. Suddenly, Sonnet wasn't running 50 plus agents in a row. It was running 20 and then stopping at the end of the context window, which with 5-minute TTL cache meant that I was never hitting the entire in time to see the cache. And it was sitting with a couple 100,000 tokens in memory that I'd have to clear regardless, which was quite frustrating. So we had to change up the design a little bit, and we went to a bit of a more manual routing method. We're still playing with ChatGPT, but instead of having it run for 9 hours straight, we'd have it run for, we'd turn off compaction to get the extra 20,000 tokens, and we'd have it run through to the end of context. And then at the end of the context, at 2 hours after we started, we'd dump that whole thing back into ChatGPT with my analysis of what's happening, plan out the next steps, and then have Claude run through the next steps, which it probably would have been better to just go right into trying to fix the swarm right away, but we felt we were really close to being release ready, so this felt like it was fast enough, and we did this for a couple months, and it worked, but it was the wrong idea. But then in February, Copilot CLI launched autopilot mode. It launched in general. Copilot CLI launched in general access with autopilot, which is like a Ralph loop, and fleet mode, which is their name for a swarm. And we jumped right into it. We set up a swarm based on it. We were active in the launch thread, chatting with them all. And suddenly we went from a couple hundred of those previous things a day to thousands of contributions a day, with not the same quality as the previous one, but good enough that it was still making some progress. And it was different because how Copilot was set up, you couldn't steer it continuously without paying full re-ingest costs, essentially. So we were set up in a way where we were incentivized to have multiple computers running with a role each for a multi-day goal prompt, essentially. And I set it up with what I've been calling an octopus cluster, because it's not quite like a Beowulf cluster. They're not able to directly talk to each other. They're contributing, they're coordinating lightly through GitHub, kind of like a badly communicating remote team, which, yeah. But essentially they were making issues on GitHub. They were pulling PRs. They were having the hundreds of agents all swarm over it and put to their plans, and then one final swarm at the central computer doing merge gating. And it created a lot of dead code, to be honest. But it did push a lot of the pros forward a bit. But unfortunately, it also forced GitHub to change their pricing because they can't do 2 billion tokens off one request. It's not going to go, it's a little too much for them. And unfortunately, that actually did result in us getting banned by GitHub. And it is incredibly hard to get a hold of a human at an organization that is heavily automated. So, yeah, but that wasn't the end. We still got back on set up and all that and going. And then Codex came with a 10 times bonus and launching goal loop. I got lucky there. I got access to, they gave away like a 10 times bonus for some people that gave me access to 200 billion tokens from Codex alone for that month. And right as they launched goal loops, which was an even further enhanced version of the autopilot, where essentially we had layered specs. The goal loop was doing a spec layer for the actual implementation directly by Codex itself. We had our repo frameworks and our specs doing broader direction. We had our roadmaps for long term, and we had GitHub issue tracking and stuff. And the upshot of it was that with that layered, very declarative posture, it was able to work fairly well, fairly hands-off. And the nice thing about Codex for this was that we didn't pay any extra cost to steer. So unlike Copilot, where we could set up once at the start and then it was running for a week without us really being able to touch it and guide it other than chucking PRs at it, for Codex, we could go on every morning, see where it's at, tell it what we want to go, what we want to do for the day, and have it keep pushing forward, while still being that same long-running goal loop. And we're talking 10, 18, 20, 30 days of this almost. And it ran pretty well. And then I did the scary thing and went on vacation and left it running. And it didn't break things too much. A little bit, some small things, but like nothing too crazy got broken. But then 2 days in, IBM reached out. They were looking for an inline completion target with LSP 3.1 inline completion support for conformance testing. And they happened across our LSP, which apparently is one of the only ones that has inline completion at this point. And from trackside, we shipped a release. We fixed the couple, 3, 4 bugs that they encountered and got a release out from while watching cars zoom around the track with Claude Web. Yeah, so, and it worked. Like, based on just what had been implemented from the specs and what had been doing without me, like, I had never tried the inline completion. I had put the spec in there as just for the purpose of having full LSP 3.1 support. I don't have an AI provider hooked up for it, I don't know, whatever, but it did proper inline completion. And it doesn't have full inline completion, it's not covering everything, but for the limited amount that it does cover, it didn't crash. And as a result, they went from originally just reaching out for, hey, we could maybe add you in the future as we'd like to use your LSP 3.1 inline completion support as a conformance target to, oh, you have a DApp. Oh, we can integrate this DApp. Oh, we can integrate this DApp today. And it's now shipping in, or it's now available in Eclipse and Android Studio. Sorry, Android Studio and JetBrains, thanks to LSP4IJ. So shout out to IBM for that, and yeah. And remember, I'm doing this from trackside. I don't have a computer with me. I'm slightly fighting the swarm because it's shutting down my PRs as being out of lane. And it still got out, and it's now available. If you're using JetBrains, you're already using it. But because the expensive part of this is review. The generation costs almost nothing. It's 5 cents a pass at subscription rates and barely more than that at API rates. The CI costs more than the actual LLMs themselves. The CI, OpenClaw spends $20 per PR in CI. I'm trying to keep it below $1, but even that, I mean, if you're doing 1,000 PRs that, as small as they may be, $20, even $1 in CI is expensive. So we're self-hosting our CI at this point and trying to keep everything below like 30 minutes of Linux equivalent minutes, and yeah. But even that isn't the expensive part. Because if you spend 5 minutes reviewing it, you're already spending more than you spend on CI. So if you can use an extra LLM pass to cut 5 minutes of your own research time, you're saving yourself time and money there. And a big part of that was figuring out how to encode the specs and documentation into the repo in a way that's properly tracked and single responsibility principle enough and dry enough that you not only have the LLMs able to verify each thing and correct things and have commit history of what the corrections were, but you also have a long-term record of, hey, this is what this is supposed to be, this is what the test say it's actually doing, and this is what it actually does do, and lets the LLMs match between them. Very much like a three-way match in accounting. And that's also about making the PR small enough and quickly reviewable enough that you don't have to worry as much about it. If you're doing a single line bug fix, there's a lot less things to go wrong than a 1,000-line bug fix, to say the least. And simplifying things and getting them to the point where it can be done with easier and lower levels of review needed is what unlocks the ability to move fast. And I found that it's actually kind of an interesting hill. As people get into LLMs, you see a lot of them jump up to like, oh, I can put that slide in. You see a lot of people jump up to like 1,000-line PRs, 10,000-line PRs, 70,000-line PRs, and then a couple months later, they're back down to 100-line PRs because it moves faster having small PRs like that. And a big part of what we need to do here and why we're able to, what the value is here is that we don't need to parse Perl perfectly to parse Perl usefully. We'd like to parse Perl perfectly, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot that we can take advantage of with static parsing that doesn't need compilation. And it's a question of where is the effort best placed to get actual value for people who want to use it and make their lives easier. Because, yeah, only Perl can parse Perl because you have to compile to parse Perl. And now Rust can too. Almost. And, yeah. So yeah, as of today, Perl LSP is in public beta. And questions? Yeah, quite a lot. Oh, sorry, the question was, aren't you describing the 80-20 rule was the question? And yeah, quite a bit. The hardest, you can get value before you get everything covered.
I missed some things at the start of your talk. First of all, what does LSP stand for?
Sure, language server protocol. It's for letting the IDE and also the LLMs get a better understanding of what the code does and where it is. LSPs are a big impact in what LLMs can, helping them understand what's going on there.
Okay, and I take it this is the work of a particular company. I didn't get who we.
Effortless Metrics. It's my firm. Effortless Metrics? That's me. Cool. And cool. Okay, now just one more thing. We're also putting out engineering preview for Ripper today, which does static mutation analysis on to kind of see where your tests, where you need test coverage, and kind of give you an idea if your tests even look like they can cover the code that they're supposed to be covering in the diff and what changed, without having to run full mutation analysis. And as of today, it's an engineering preview for Rust, Python, TypeScript, and Perl. Thank you.